has gotten, once you start reading it, you can't put it down. The author of this is Brendan Corner. Brendan, welcome to Big 550 KTRS. Kerner.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You got it. So take us back to June 2014. What happened here at Lumiere Place Casino?
Yeah, so actually the accountants at the casino were kind of doing an end-of-day auditing of the slot machines, and they found that a couple of the machines had paid out sums that didn't make any sense. They paid out way, way more than they were supposed to pay out, and they kind of went back and looked at the security footage, and they saw there was one man, this kind of dark-haired man in his late 30s, who was winning thousands of dollars from these machines. It made no sense. They knew he had to be cheating.
And so they went back and looked at the tape, and according to your story in Wired.com, he did it wirelessly?
Yeah, he did. This was what's fascinating. Most people who cheat slot machines somehow fiddle with the insides. They kind of, pop open some screws and put a device inside and somehow manipulate it that way. This guy, all he would do is he would hold up an iPhone in front of the screen. He'd record, maybe 24 spins. He'd walk away from the machine for a few minutes, come back, and then start winning hundreds of dollars at a time. So they couldn't really figure out what he was doing.
But yet they knew he was cheating.
Absolutely, because the way that slot machines work is that they have software that runs them, and they have the mathematical edge tilted in favor of the house. So over time, the casino's pretty darn sure of how much money they're going to make.
Right. So they alerted the Missouri Gaming Commission, and it found out that this guy was doing it all over the place.
Yeah, not just this guy. He actually had a crew of 4 individuals who were doing this at casinos all over St. Louis, as well as in Kansas City, East St. Louis. They'd been in California as well. So they've been going around the U.S. for some months, actually, performing these tricks on slot machines.
Now, were they able? Okay, so after that, because from my movie watching, you don't want to cheat a casino because you'll end up with some brass knuckles in your face.
Right.
What did Lumiere Casino do after they found out that it was this guy, but they couldn't catch him?
Well, they actually were able to identify him. His name was Murat Bliev, and he was actually a Russian national. And by cooperating with the authorities, including the FBI, they found out he'd actually gone back to Russia just a few days after he'd pulled off this scam in St. Louis. So he was kind of beyond the reach of the authorities at that time. However, he's actually part of an organization, a criminal organization in St. Petersburg, Russia, that actually sends these teams of scammers all over the world, really, to Romania, to Singapore, to Macau, to Peru, to pull off these scams in various casinos that have these slot machines. So he actually ended up coming back to the U.S. and going right back to St. Louis to try to do this again with a new team of colleagues.
And that's how they caught him.
Yeah, and so he got into a casino there, and they picked him up on their surveillance video, and they actually had a photo of him say, "Look out for this guy," and that was the end of his exploits.
How much did he take from the Lumiere Casino the first go around?
So they try to keep their winnings to about $10,000 a day, $1,000 per 10 machines to, avoid too much scrutiny. So he took basically $10,000 a day. So his first go around, $20,000 in 2 days, but he was doing this for months with 3 other men. So think, $40,000 a day times however many months they were doing this. It's quite a haul. Now,
do we know how he did it or no?
Yeah, we have a pretty good idea, actually, and this is maybe the most fascinating part of the story. There was a cheater who was caught about a month or so later in California in July 2014, and they actually seized his cell phones. And they found out what he was doing is that he was relaying the video of the slot machines in action back to Russia, and then hackers in Russia would analyze the video, and what they did is they figured out that these machines are actually not truly random. And there actually is a pattern that they were able to discern by studying the software of the machines. They would send back signals, and the phones would then vibrate at the exact moment when the scammers were supposed to hit the spin button. They'd have the biggest odds of success. So that's really the core of what these guys do.
And so is that illegal?
So that's a great question. So a lot of people have asked this. So there's a couple things at play here. First of all, every state, Missouri included, that has casinos has laws against using electronic devices in the course of scamming or cheating or somehow aiding play an electronic slot machine. So they validated that law. But also once they cross state lines, they were going from California to Missouri to Illinois, it became a federal case. That's why the FBI got involved. So yes, it is illegal, though a lot of people out there who read the story, I think, said that it should not be, that it's just people manipulating and taking advantage of what should be a legal loophole.
Is the guy in Russia listening to a computer tell him what the random order is, or is it a guy who's really smart, figured out the random order, and then relaying that to the guy here in the casino?
Sure. Well, it's clearly there's someone back in St. Petersburg who is very adept at computers and has a lot of computing power at his disposal. So he gets the video, he feeds it into a program they have, and then they send back these timing markers to a customized app on the iPhones of the people in the field, and then those apps cause the phone to vibrate when these scammers are supposed to strike the spin button.
You know, it's almost like that goofy story of the guy who figured out the game show Press Your Luck.
Yes, a lot of people have said that as well. And there's actually a TV movie about that guy from 15 years ago, and now I feel compelled to watch it. So I probably have to Netflix that pretty soon.
So now, are casinos now on the lookout for this? Are these hackers still able to do this? Are they able to get away with it without being seen?
Yeah, they are. In fact, they're refining their techniques to make so they will not attract scrutiny from security so much. One thing, there was a team caught in Singapore just a few months ago, and what they were doing is they were putting, instead of holding up the iPhones in front of the screen, they would put them in their shirt pockets and create a little hole in the shirt pocket and put some mesh over it so they could unobtrusively record these spins. And also, I think some of these scammers now are streaming the video back to Russia via Skype. So instead of having to walk away and then come back, which might arouse suspicion, they just sit there for the entire time.
So what are the casinos doing about this?
There's not a lot they can do except be very, very vigilant. One of the few remaining tells is the fact that the way people behave when they're part of these scams is that instead of just, hitting the spin button kind of robotically again and again like most slot machine players, they sit there and kind of have their finger hovering over the button for quite a long time until their iPhone vibrates. So I think that security guards have to look for people who are kind of playing in a suspicious manner.
Brendan Corner, our guest, the book, the article is in Wired.com. Now, how did you come to find out about this story?
So I wrote a piece for Wired a couple of years back about actually a slot machine counterfeiter in Latvia who, during the course of that, I met a lot of people who were involved in this world of slot machine surveillance and slot machine engineering. I got a tip from one of them several months back, and I've been reporting it out ever since.
Now, the other interesting part of this story is Vladimir Putin, and take me through this. Vladimir Putin has banned gambling or banned slot machines, which has led down this path to unintended consequences?
That's exactly right. So in 2009, when Vladimir Putin was actually prime minister of Russia, he was between his presidential terms, he was very perturbed by the rise of organized crime, Georgian organized crime in particular. And so he thought he could weaken the power of these Georgian organized crime families by actually banning virtually all casino gaming in Russia. So pretty much overnight, thousands of casinos had to close their doors, and they scrambled. They had to get rid of their equipment very quickly for pennies on the dollar, so they would sell it to anyone they could. And many of these slot machines ended up in the hands of kind of nefarious individuals, including these hackers in St. Petersburg. They were able to open them up and look inside and analyze the source code, and this really helped them develop this technique of theirs.
And so because they banned it, they just created a bigger problem by this.
Exactly. Like a lot of times, prohibition of anything, as we've discovered in this country with prohibition of alcohol and drugs and all sorts of things like that, there's often unintended consequences that are pretty nasty.
Brandon, what's been the reaction since you've published this story?
It's been unexpectedly huge. It's really been one of my most well-read stories of recent months, and I think you identified one of the chief areas of debate is should this be illegal or should it not be? Because clearly casinos have the odds tilted in their favor. Some people think it's unfair for them to then lash out against those who grab back the odds, smart consumers, as it were. So there's a lot of debate over the legality of this.
Have the casinos helped you write this story, or did they try and stop you from writing this story?
Actually, I got quite a bit of help from people who work at casinos. Casinos are very concerned about this, and in fact, they're a little upset about the fact that manufacturers aren't doing much about this. if anyone wasn't too cooperative, was the manufacturer of these slot machines. They're the ones who have the flaws in their software, and they're basically really not doing anything to correct those flaws. And there's not much they really can do except, take back the old machines and put out new ones, and they're not really prepared to do that.
Right. And what's the one company that seems to make all the slot machines in the world? Was it in Australia?
There's a company called Aristocrat Leisure in Australia that seems to have been targeted. Its Mark 6 series slot machine, which came out in about 2004, 2005, has been victimized a lot by these people, as well as an Austrian company called Novomatic, which makes a machine called Coolfire, and that also seems to have a flaw with the way it works.
And so casinos are very careful to watch somebody hovering over a spin button, and if you pretend to be hacking it, they're going to come kick you out of the casino?
Yeah, generally they don't get the authorities involved. Generally they'll seize your winnings if you have them, and they will ban you from the casino. But I think that you will start to see more prosecutions, especially when these crews cross state lines in the U.S. and they become federal cases. That's a really good way to get these people in the criminal justice system.
This is a great movie. Anybody approach you about the rights for a movie?
Not yet, but hopefully soon.
There you go. Brendan Corner with us, who has written a great article about hacking casinos, and it took place right here in St. Louis at the Lumiere place. I guess, finally, the bad news is that it was Lumiere. The good news is that Lumiere was the one who figured it out.
Yeah, they did. I mean, hats off to their accountants. I think many casinos, because these crews are so, careful about limiting their winnings and kind of moving from machine to machine and not taking too much in any given day, a lot of this has gone under the radar. So hats off to Lumiere Place, back office that caught this and doing their audits.
And finally, what happened to the one guy that they caught? Is he in jail forever, or did he get a slap on the wrist? What's his story?
No, so he was caught as a crew of 4. So 3 of these were Russian nationals, and they eventually pled guilty, received 2 years in federal prison, and then will be deported. A 4th man, who's actually a Kazakh national who's been granted religious asylum in the U.S. in 2013, he is currently cooperating with the authorities and providing them information about how the scam works. So he's yet to be sentenced.
Wired.com, Brandon Corner. Brandon, thanks for the article. Thanks for the time. Good luck.
Oh, thanks for having me. Take care.
You got it. It was a really interesting story. Wired.com, Russian engineers figured out a way to cheat the slot machines, and the casinos really have no fix for it. There you go. Only in America, or only in St. Petersburg. 9:22 here. Big